You know, I did not expect in 2023 to be saying this is a Genex combo video. But it's been a weird couple of weeks, and we're having some interesting cards announced by Konami. And today is no different because we have 4 new Genex cards to talk about. And honestly, it's taken the deck from completely unplayable to possibly one of the most ridiculous combo decks I've ever seen in my life. That loses to one hand trap. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to talk about the new Genex cards, what they do, how they supplement the deck, and then I'm going to show you a single 1-card combo which ends on anywhere between 4 and 9 negates, so I think I worked it out to be. So yeah, let's get started. So the first card I want to talk about is the Link one, because it's the most important card that has been announced. This is Repaired Genex Controller, and this might be the most custom of custom cards that has ever been released ever. So, this card requires 1 level 4 or lower Genex monster to summon. Plenty of those. If this card is Link summoned, you can add 1 Genex monster from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty simple effect, just adds a guy back. The next effect's a little bit insane. Once per chain, if a Genex monster is added to your hand except by drawing it, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 Genex monster. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except by synchro summon using a Genex tuner as material. In case you didn't understand what that meant, this is a non-once per turn, immediately normal summon a monster, given a Genex monster has been added to your hand from somewhere other than drawing it. This is completely ridiculous when you realise that pretty much every single Genex monster on normal summon adds a guy to hand. So we've got 5 separate normal summons, all that add monsters to your hands. And we have Birdman, which can return a face-up monster you control to the hand to special summon himself, which also triggers the effect of Genex Controller to immediately normal summon. This means we're basically playing like Gadgets if Gadgets were made in 2023, where we can just normal summon, search, normal summon, search, normal summon, search, which allows us to build quite ridiculous boards. We also have a new Synchro in Arms of Genex Return 0. This is a Genex Synchro, the only good one, and it requires a Dark Tuner and 1+ non-tuner monsters. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish 1 monster from your graveyard with the same attribute as that monster, but a different one than those banished to activate this effect, the effect of this card's name this turn. So essentially, if your opponent activates a Rhino Heart, you can banish a Water, and that will negate that effect. If they then try and activate a Guido, you can banish an Earth and negate that effect. If they then go have this effect, you can banish a Dark. You understand where I'm going from. So this is quite insane. I guess this is up to 7 negates at a turn. There's 7 attributes, right? Water, Earth, Fire, Wind, Dark, Light, Divine. Yeah, so technically this could be up to 7 negates. It's probably going to be more like 3 or 4, but this card is basically a better Appaloosa if you have the right setup. This has a second effect, where once per turn, you can target up to 6 of your Genex monsters with different attributes that are banished and or in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, then you can destroy up to that many cards in the spell and trap zone. So this is also a non-targeting Heartbeat's Feather Duster if you have this set up in graveyards, and it recycles all your Genex monsters so you can start searching again. This card's insane. Not quite as insane as the Link, but it is quite insane. The other 2 new cards are in the main deck, and we have our Genex Undyne. This is a retrain of Genex Undyne. It's a level 4. It's an Aqua. 1700 attack, 1100 defense. That doesn't really matter. Once per turn, you can banish 1 Genex monster from your graveyard. This card gains that monster's attribute. Then, if you banished a tuner, this card becomes a tuner, which is quite helpful. The more important effect, though, is if you control a Genex Synchro monster, you can target 2 Genex monsters in your graveyard, including this card, add them to your hand, also banish any cards sent to the graveyard for the rest of this turn. This is a really interesting restriction to put on the cards. I really quite like it, to be fair, because it means that if you are going to continue playing your turn, then you're going to lose resources for the big negate guy, which is good, but you will notice at no point is there a hard once per turn on this card, which means you could use this second effect up to 3 times, because you can have 3 copies of this card. which is quite ridiculous, to be honest, because you'll notice this adds cards to your hand, which of course triggers your Link monster, which means you can do this to add cards back to continue normal summoning. The last card to talk about here is our Genex Touring. This is a level 2, if I can get up, tuner, spellcaster dark with 600 attack and 600 defense. This is searchable off Cupid Pitch. I don't think that'll be relevant. During your opponent's main phase, if you control a Genex monster quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can synchro summon one Genex synchro monster, and you only use this effect of cheering once per turn. And if this card on the field is used as synchro material for a Genex monster, it can be treated as a level 1 or 3. I'm only playing 1 in this deck. It's fine, but the fact that it only synchro summons into Genex synchro monsters, and all of them are bad except for the new one, and you're going into this one on your turn anyway, because you want to be able to trigger your Undyne, it's just a little bit mid, but I could see this probably coming up in some form of grind game, or when you've been hand-trapped in some way. I don't know, it's probably worth playing 1. I've got the other 2 on the side. This card's weird, I don't like it particularly, but it's a Genex card which came out this year, so it's instantly better than about 30 of the Genex cards which came out before. Normally, this would be where I start to show you the combos, but I'm going to make the assumption that none of you have any idea what Genex cards do, so let's talk about the ones I'm playing. So we'll start with our Genex Crusher. When this card is normal summoned, you can add one level 4 Genex monster from your deck to your hands. This is obviously not once per turn, and it searches a level 4. Well, that is our Genex Turbo. When this card is normal summoned, you can add one level 1 Genex monster from your deck to your hands. So not an Genex, just any Genex monster, any level 1. This is also not once per turn, and can search for Genex Power Planner. This card says, when this card is normal summoned, you can add one level 3 Genex Effects monster from your deck to your hands. This has multiple search targets. This can search for our Genex Magma, which, when normal summoned, can add a level 2 Genex monster from your deck to your hand. You'll notice this takes us straight back to our Genex Crusher, which means we can keep going around and around and around it again, because they all search each other. But Planner also searches for Genex Ari Birdman, which is probably the one that most people are familiar with. This card says you can return one face-up monster you control to the hand, special summon this card, banish it when it leaves the field, and it gains 500 if you return to wins. That's not important. What's important about this card is, because the Link is going to resolve in a way where you're going to normal summon a monster, add, then trigger effect, normal summon another one, add. You need to find some form of breakpoint where you can synchro summon to be able to get monsters off the board so you can continue normal summoning. Birdman does this by being able to allow you to stop, synchro summon, and then Birdman bounce something to your hands. A monster is returned to your hands, so you can start the normal summoning chain all over again. So Birdman's one of the most important cards in this sort of version of this deck, and it's of course searchable off of Planner. We also have Genex Undyne, which is also level 3. This card's also insane. When this card is normal summoned, you can send one water monster from your deck to the graveyard as cost, and then you can add one Genex controller from your deck to your hand. So this has multiple targets. We can send the Christian Rosenix. This card essentially says banish it from the graveyard, summon a level 1 token. This just gives you another non-tuner when your board is practically full. We have the Genex Undyne, like we talked about earlier. This can send this to the graveyard, then you can banish it, add back, and it adds the Genex controller, which is a tuner, and it's easy to summon and easy to search. We're playing 3 of it because I really want Undyne to resolve, and also just having a guy in hand isn't the worst thing, even if it is a normal monster somehow. Who haven't we talked about? So in the main deck, the only ones we haven't talked about is Genex Neutron. This card it basically searches in your end phase, which I think could potentially have some application against Nibiru. If you summon this earlier in your combo line, you're going to search in your end phase, and then if you can get the Link back on the board somehow after you're in Nibiru, you search in the end phase, and it added a card to hand, so Link summon, and then you climb and search this guy, so you can synchro summon for the 10 in your opponent's turn. I'm not entirely sure how you would get this guy back on your field, because I'm pretty sure you're going to special summon him once per turn. I think they had that text on it. I don't see it on this one, but I'm sure I read it on the other one. Yeah, so if you can do that, there's a potential way to play around here, so I'm playing it in this list. And the only other card I'm playing is Genex Spare, which is literally just a spare monster. It is an effect level 3 machine tuner, which means it is searchable off of Power Planner, because Power Planner cannot search Controller because it's a normal monster, but it can search this one. Obviously, you could just search for a Birdman, but you probably want to keep your Birdmans in deck if possible, so I'm just playing a literal Genex Spare tuner. The rest of the deck, I'm playing Call By, Cross Out, and all of the hand traps, because this deck loses to a single hand trap, and I mean that. This Link monster is absolutely ridiculous, like a proper custom card, but it dies to Vader, it dies to Imperm, it dies to Mourner, it dies to Ogre. The effect to add back, which starts off your normal summoning, well, that dies to fucking Bell. We're gonna get Nibiru because we don't put a negate on boards like summon 8 or summon 9 or something stupid like that. Ash Blossom stopping one of your searches could just end your turn because you don't add a card to normal summon the next one. And of course, Draw and Lockbird's going to hurt quite a bit because we're adding a lot of cards to our hand. To go against that, you could potentially play a super heavy package because other than the Callby and the Crossout, we are not playing spells and traps in this deck because, well, Genex don't have any spells or traps. They're like 45 monsters and no spells or traps for the archetype. So you could easily play this. You could easily go from a bike into a Baron to play around hand traps, or you could use it to make Gideon X to search for a copy of our Genex Turbo to start your combos going. This obviously doesn't use your normal summon, which is important, and this is something you could definitely play. I'm not playing in this list because I'm just testing what Genex cards do. You can also play Eagle Booster. This card is insane for these sorts of decks. Target your Link monster. It's unaffected by card effects this turn. That's pretty good, isn't it? And the only other cards I'm playing in the side deck are other cards you might potentially want to play. So this is Genex All Solid. This has a soft once per turn effect to send a face-up water Genex monster you control to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. We have multiple targets for this in Undyne and in Undyne. So you could potentially draw 500 cards, probably, with this card if you want to play it. The only issue is it's not searchable. Despite the fact it's a level 2, it's not an RGenex, so it's not searchable off of Magma, but you can still play this card if you want to. You could play RGenex Accelerator, which is basically a baby version of the Link 1. When a Genex monster is added from your deck to your hand, you can reveal that monster to special summon it. This is inherently worse because it's special summons, and a bunch of these guys only trigger on normal summon, but this is potentially something you could play to try and play around hand traps. You could also play Genex Overseer. This card says when this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon a level 3 or lower Genex monster from your hand. That's pretty okay in it, but again, things trigger on normal summon. And the last card is Genex Solar. So this card says you can normal summon this card by attributing 1 Genex monster, inflict 500 damage to your opponent each time a face-up Genex monster you control is sent to the graveyard. This is really interesting because there is definitely going to be a way where you can send 16 Genex monsters from your field to the graveyards because you could just constantly keep summoning them. The issue is Genex Solar is completely unsearchable in Archetype. There is no way of searching this card. You're never going to want to play more than 1 because it's so bricky. But there's potentially an FTK with Genex using this Genex Solar. We'll very briefly talk about what we're playing in the extra deck. Link Spider, we're playing Controller. Baron, Omega, 2 Heralds, Dawn Dragster, Crystal Wing, Chegging, and 3 spare spaces because I didn't use anything else in the combo. So, let's go on to the combo, shall we? This is going to be a 1-card combo using our Genex Turbo. And it's going to go a little bit nuts. So we're going to start by normal summoning Turbo and using the effect to add a copy of Genex Power Planner from our deck to our hand. We're then going to link off our Turbo to make our Link monster and then banish it and then put it back on the field and put it back in the EMZ because I missed Declare. We're then going to use the effect to add back the Turbo and then we're going to trigger the effect to normal summon our Turbo since a monster was added to hand and add another copy of Power Planner. From here we can trigger the link again to summon Power Planner to search for an Undyne, and then we can trigger the link again to normal summon Undyne. From here we can send our copy of our Genex Undyne to add a Genex controller, and we added a card to hand so we can normal summon another guy. So we'll normal summon Power Planner, which will add a Birdman. We added the cards to hand, so let's normal summon Genex Controller. From here, we're going to break from the normal summoning chain, and we're going to use the Genex Controller, the Genex Undyne, and the Genex Turbo to synchro summon a copy of Baron de Fleur. We're then going to use the Baron's effect to pop one of these planners because we actually require the space on board. And from here, we're going to go Birdman effect to bounce the planner, special summon the Birdman, and then use the effect of the link to normal summon the planner and use the effect to add another copy of Undyne. None of these cards are once per turn. We're then going to use the link to summon the Undyne, and we're going to send a Rosenix adding another copy of Genex Controller, which of course is going to trigger our link to summon the Genex Controller. From here, we're going to use the planner, the Undyne, and the Genex Controller to go into a Synchro 7 in Dawn Dragster, and then we're going to use the Dawn Dragster and the Birdman to go into the archetypal Synchro 10 because we now require a Synchro 10 in our graveyard, in our monster zone, sorry, to trigger the Genex Undyne in our graveyard. Press the button. There we go. So now we're going to use the Genex Undyne, adding itself and a copy of Turbo to the hand. This Birdman in the graveyard should be banished, by the way. I don't know why I didn't banish it. And we're then going to trigger the Link monster, since it monster was added to hand, to normal summon this Turbo. That's going to allow us to grab the third Power Planner from our deck. And from here, we could normal summon the Power Planner, add another copy of Birdman, summon the Undyne, and use its effect to banish a tuner from the graveyard to become a tuner, which gives us Undyne and Turbo being 2 level 4s, and we can go into a copy of Omega. From here, we're going to use Omega's effect to rip a card from our opponent's hand, mostly just so we have space to continue playing the game. From here, we're going to use Birdman's effect to bounce the Power Planner, and this is going to, of course, trigger our Link monster to summon again, so we can summon Power Planner and add a copy of Genex Spare. From here, we're going to summon the Genex Spare, and then we are going to synchro summon using our Power Planner and our Birdman to go into a Herald of the Arclight. And then we're going to use our Rosenix in the graveyard, banishing it to summon a token, and synchro summon into another copy of Herald of the Arclight. So, what is this board? So this board is 2 Omega Gates in Herald of the Arclight, and also being Floodgates, where any monster set from the field from the hand or main deck to the graveyard is banished instead. So screw you to Parliament. And we also have Baron de Fleur, which is of course an Omnigate, and we have a bunch of monster negates from Return 0. How many do we have in this instance? Well, we have 1 for a dark, a water, and a light. If you went into a different Synchro 7 than Dawn Dragster, the one I put in because it was the first Synchro 7 I could think of, playing a different attribute than the ones in our graveyard, we would also have another negate. So if we played, I can't think of a Synchro 7. Black Rose? Is that a fire? Maybe? If Black Rose Dragon's a fire, then you could go the Black Rose, not use the effect, and you have a negate for a fire monster as well. Yeah, so we have 1, 2, 3 different negates currently in our graveyard, could be 4, and depending on your hand, you might even have more. And if you lose your Baron de Fleur, you get a negate for a wind and that sort of stuff. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negates. Yeah, 6 negates in this instance, all from a single normal summon of our Genex Turbo, which isn't the worst thing in the world. We've also ripped a card from our opponent's hand, and this Omega is going to come back at some point. So that's quite good. That's not bad. And I think the best thing about this is if your opponent does manage to clear your board, the top deck of any Genex monster essentially allows you just to go again and just summon more monsters and summon more monsters, which is absolutely insane. So that's what Genex can do with the new support. This Link monster might be the most pushed cards ever released in Yu-Gi-Oh! But also the weakest cards ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! But that's the end of the video. If you did enjoy, I really would appreciate it if you could leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We do plenty of this, like, combo videos from decks that have just been announced and support that's just been announced. So you can check out the channel and you'll see ones for the most recent Snake Eye cards, and you'll also see them for the Goblin cards. So if that sounds interesting to you, check out some more videos, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.